Okay, we'll resume this hearing of the Senate Economics Legislation Committee. We are in budget estimates, and we have before us the Financial Advisor Standards and Ethics Authority. Thank you very much for the accommodating the late change of schedule, as I'm sure you're all very, very well aware that this is a regular occurrence at estimates. Now, we do have your opening statement, and we have all had a chance to have a look through it. So with your agreement, Mr Glenfield, are you okay if we just table that and go straight to questions, given the hour?
No, I'm happy to do so. Thank you, Chair.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And we'll go straight to Senator Small.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, folks. If I can turn to the FASEA exam, I'm advised that one of the questions that is asked during the enrolment process is whether English is the candidate's first language. What's the purpose of that question? And is there anything in the design or operation of the exam that takes into account the challenges that people for whom English is a second language, for instance, might face in sitting the exam?
Yeah, thank you for the question. You're right, the question is asked to enable us to determine which candidates do actually have English as a second language. As part of the marking process that ACE, the exam provider, does, they benchmark each question and look at the response based on who made the response to see whether there was any disadvantage to a particular group. And one of the particular things they look at is whether English as a second language group had trouble answering a particular question, i.e. did it favour against them because of the way it was written. It may have been written in a way that it doesn't come across, to an English speaker, it may come across very well, but to someone with a second language, it might be difficult to understand. And if that question proved to be very problematic for that group, it's removed from the marking so that they're not disadvantaged. So that's the reason why we do it. Okay,
and has there been any such occurrence?
To date, I don't believe we've had one that we've had to remove because there is a lot of, ACE are very experienced at writing exam questions, and there's a lot of effort put into making sure that the grammar is in a way that will be understood by all.
Okay, perfect. If something crops up on notice, we'll be fine, but otherwise I'll move on. I understand the final exam scheduled before the deadline for existing advisors is scheduled for the 5 days between 4 and 9 November of this year, and that basis previous exams, it usually takes approximately 6 weeks for the results to come out. So on that basis, there will be a number of financial advisors who receive notice in the week or two before Christmas that they have in fact failed the FASEA exam. Is there an option that would allow them time to sell their business and find alternative employment? Or will these small business financial advisors simply need to sell their businesses in something of a fire sale in the week between Christmas and New Year and before they are prevented from operating beyond 1 January 2022?
Yeah, there's a number of points there. It is a difficult one in that we've tried to run the exams as long as we possibly can in the year to give people the opportunity to sit. If you don't pass, come 1 January, you do come off the financial advisor register, which you're correct means you can't give advice. You do have an option under the Corporations Act to come back and sit the exam next year. And if you pass, you can come back onto the register. You can't give advice during the period that you're off. So the question, I guess, would be, can you wait a period to try and sit again? Or are you that you just don't think you get past and you need to move your business on? I don't have any power to provide an extension for that. That's the role under 921U is to do the exam, set the exam. We don't have any powers around extension of time or anything like that.
Okay, thank you. I understand, and it's good that it's in your opening statement here as well, that there's 1,437 advisors who have attempted the exam, however, are yet to pass. So for those advisors who've attempted the exam more than once, how many attempts has what's the most number of attempts that a candidate has had in total and then ultimately passed? And therefore, what is the actual overall pass rate for advisors who have sat the exam more than once?
Okay. Amelia, you'll probably know better than I do the most that somebody has sat.
Thank you, Senator. We have had the most that someone has sat to date is 5 times. And then that one particular person did actually pass. But I'd have to take on notice the exact pass rates for each of the ones that have sat and resat.
Sorry,
Don't
can you
have
just,
that complete information.
for the Hansard record, could you just also please state your name and the capacity in which you appear? Just
Sorry, Amelia Constantinidis, Standards Director at FASEA.
thank you.
Okay, perfect, thanks. And if we could just return to the point then, that for these individuals who haven't yet passed, they hit the deadline at the end of this year. Is it true that they would simply be able to resit the exam, or are there other requirements such as, the need to do a degree and have a year of professional service under their belt before they can resit?
I'll take on note that you actually quote the right sections of the Corporations Act. There will be 2 ways for them to get back on. One is the route that you just said, that you went through the new entrant approach and you got a degree and you passed the... Sorry, there's more than... yeah, and you got a degree, etc. But there is I think under the Corporations Act, there's a section that allows them to be suspended, suspended off the bar until they sit and pass the exam. So they would be reliant on future exams by the standard set at that point in time.
So I guess in those scenarios, either their current clients might be without their advisor for a period of some months, or potentially well in excess of a year, and therefore likely to have to move to a different provider.
Yeah, that is quite possible, but I think that is what was anticipated with the legislation at any rate. That I think it was noted in the PJC of the FSI, it was expected that not everybody would get through. I mean, that's the test of skill set.
Yep. So of those advisors who have failed and are yet to pass, do you have any data on how many of them received a result between 50% and the credit standard required to pass and be accredited?
I'll take that one on notice. I don't have it with me.
Okay, thank you. And final question from me. Through the analysis of exam results, has FASEA become aware of any other reasons that have contributed to advisors failing the exam, such as those related to health, anxiety, or inability to operate with technology? And if any such factor has been identified, have mitigating measures been put in place to assist those same advisors to pass the exam at a later time?
So in terms of direct contact, we have direct contact from some advisors that advise, as you say, that they're anxious and they're struggling with the exam. Generally, if we have having an issue like that, we will refer them to their association to try to get them assistance with that. For those that have difficulty around technology or other reasons why they have trouble sitting the exam, they can apply for what I would call special consideration. I think ACE used a different term. And there is a mechanism to do that through ACE, so that we do have advisors that are given extra time. We have advisors who have done a paper-based version. We have advisors who have had someone take the phone, if you like, of their answers, so transcript of their answers. So there are a number of mechanisms put in place to try and help. But at the end of the day, they do need to sit the exam. We can't exempt them from the exam.
No, that's understood. With that, and if on notice, you can follow up with that detail around what the credible alternative is for a suspended advisor to come back without doing a degree, etc. That would be great, but thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Senator Small. Senator Chisolm.
Thanks, Chair. Did FASEA consult with any part-time advisors or their representative union, the FSU, in the development of continuing professional development and professional year standards?
So in terms of the consultation, so our consultation was done broadly online. We released a consultation document for people to respond to. The numbers we've had are also online and who they came from. I don't know directly, and I can't recall directly whether the union put in a submission or not. And Billy, you may know that better than I do, or else we could take that on notice and come on it.
Okay, so you didn't seek out a discussion with the union?
I'm not aware that we did, no.
And what about any part-time advisors?
So in terms of the consultation approach, the consultation was done largely through, in terms of, as I said, it was online, the ability to submit, and we did roundtables that held with representative licensees of advisors and their representative associations.
Okay. So how is a female advisor who wishes to take maternity leave meant to be able to meet FASEA's professional year requirements?
Amelia, do you want to comment on that one as it deals with standard?
Yep, thank you. There are provisions for the licensee to be able to accommodate part-time advisors. The standard is a minimum of 12 months, and the hours that have been described in the standard, which is 1,600 hours, are taken on the basis that it's a full-time FTE, but can be extended to someone that is a part-time employee. That's been, and we are aware of people that, I don't know the exact numbers, but there are people that have inquired to us in relation to can they undertake the professional year on a part-time basis, and what would that actually mean in terms of a longer period that they would actually take to complete the professional year.
Okay. So has that issue been something that's been raised with you previously?
It's not an issue that's been raised, it's more an inquiry on how can the standard work, and it's more clarification of how they would apply it to a part-time advisor.
Okay. I've seen some complaints from advisors about the availability of exams for advisors to sit, particularly in regional areas in light of the COVID pandemic. Is that something FASEA are aware of, and what have you done to address them, if so?
Yeah, we are aware. I mean, the principal thing we did to regards to the pandemic, but which we were doing it anyway, but it proved for the pandemic, was making the exam available online. So rather than having to turn up to an exam centre, you can actually do it from your home, in your office, wherever you choose to do it through remote tutoring. And we've had over 4,000 advisors do that to date. And pleasingly, the pass rate for those doing it remotely versus those coming to a centre is consistent. So that's been pleasing as well. We do offer the exam physically in regional centres each time, and that's based on demand in those centres. So I think there's been, Amelia, correct me if I'm wrong, about 31 regional centres have run exams, as well as capital cities. So we've gone out to those centres to make it available, and we've allowed for the online version for those who can't get to an exam centre.
So I'll just correct it, it's about 15 regional areas that we've gone to.
Okay.
Thanks. When FASEA is abolished, who will administer the exam requirements?
Yeah, under the proposed legislation, as I've seen it, would be ASIC as the administrator, and Minister as the legislative approval of the exam.
Okay, I'll come back to that in a second. Is FASEA now confident that all financial advisors will have a fair and reasonable chance to compete in an exam before the deadline of 1 January 2022?
I believe they have. I mean, we've offered the exam. We'll have offered the exam 11 times. Oh, sorry, 11 times by the end of the period.
Yeah,
Sorry, Amelia.
Sorry, it's 15 times by the end of the period.
Sorry, 11 today. So 15 times by the end of the period. Each time we offer the exam, it runs over 5 days, and you can sit morning or afternoon session, or you can sit it online. So if you look at that, there's been an extremely large number of exams offered throughout the transition period for people to sit.
And I might just add also that if an advisor sat from June 2019, which was the first offering, they would have had 8 opportunities to pass the exam before the end of the transition period.
Can you provide any updates on the transition of FASEA functions to ASIC and Treasury? Will any staff be moving from FASEA to ASIC or Treasury?
In terms of an update on what's happening, so we are talking regularly with both Treasury and ASIC over our functions and how we deal with them to prepare them for the transfer. We haven't had any indication over whether FASEA staff will transfer.
Okay. And is there a date from when that is due to happen?
I understand the proposed date in the consultation that went out was 31 December this year.
Okay. Just some further questions. In the transition, what will happen to the surplus funds from FASEA?
So FASEA is funded by 8 contributors on a 3-year funding agreement. The agreement provides that at the end of the funding agreement, which is 30 June this year, that whatever funds haven't been expended by FASEA would revert to those contributors in the proportion that they paid contributions to the.
Okay. So can you just remind me of the funding history of FASEA?
So FASEA is a government agency. It's a company limited by guarantee. Its funding was determined through Treasury before FASEA set up, and has signed a contribution with 8 contributors to put $3.9 million per year as funding for FASEA.
Okay. And it was basically
we received that quarterly.
Okay. And it was basically the big financial institutions and banks that provided financial advice. Is that how it was started?
That is correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
And would you say that there's been adequate funding from industry and government to ensure that FASEA could fulfil its duties?
The funding has always, in terms of size, is a challenge for the size of the role. We've operated within that funding. We knew what it was. We've staffed it accordingly, and we've been able to deliver. We had 7 functions to deliver under the Corporations Act. We've been able to deliver those. But with anything, more funding means more people that can do broader tasks, if you like. But we've had to work within what we've got.
Okay. And do you think that part of the government motivation for the transition to ASIC and Treasury is as a result of government not ensuring there is enough money for FASEA to continue?
I don't know that it's appropriate for me to comment on the government's view on why they're doing that. It's the Minister's policy, or government's policy.
Minister, did you want to?
Entirely unfair. No, when we announced the single disciplinary body, obviously, which is a response to the Hayden Rock Commission recommendation, it simply was an opportunity for some regulatory alignment. FASEA has fulfilled its objectives very well indeed, but now we need to move on to the next phase.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Just a couple from me then. Are you aware that the number of advisors has dropped below 20,000 for the first time pretty much since there's been a register?
I am aware that it's under 20,000, yes.
So is that a cause for concern for FASEA?
It's a difficult one for me to give an opinion on, in that if we look at, we could discuss the reasons for falls, but the number has been coming down throughout the FASEA, which has been driven by a range of things. We've seen a particular restructuring of the industry. If you look at those big players we were referring to before, their numbers of advisors that have reduced is significant. I was looking just the other day at our original contributors had about 6,000 odd advisors, and that's down to around 2,000 and a bit. So they're big numbers coming out of restructuring of the industry. There are those obviously that won't want to meet the highest standards. That was, I think, recognised in the FSI as part of that was a likely outcome. The question becomes, how many advisors do you need for the number of people seeking advice? And I don't have evidence on that, so it's difficult for me to comment.
Fair enough. I just want to follow up on a question I think I asked you last time, could have been the time before, but if advisors do fail an exam, I think you were trying to improve the level of feedback that you could provide them. Has that occurred? Yes. What feedback do they get now? And if people are struggling with an exam, is there, or certain elements of an exam, is there guidance that you give them in regards to that?
Yeah, so I think we've made good progress in that area for you, for advisors actually. A couple of main things we've done. One was the feedback when we spoke originally. The exam is in three parts, as you probably recall. We spoke about legal and regulatory requirements, ethics, and client behaviour. They used to get feedback that said you've underperformed in 1, 2, or 3 of those areas. The feedback that the unsuccessful advisors are now getting is under that, say, under the legal and regulatory compliance area, the areas you underperformed in were A, B, C, D. So it's broken it right down into which bits of that they've struggled with. And we've gone back for all those who have been unsuccessful in the past, and they can actually access that depth as well. So, which is really important for someone who perhaps has failed 2 or 3 times to look for any particular trends for them. We've also started running webinars both pre and post the exam. So once you sign up for the exam, you're invited to a pre-webinar that FASEA hosts where you can ask questions, and where FASEA gives a rundown of what the exam is about, what it will look like, the types of questions. Post-exam, we run a webinar for unsuccessful candidates to talk about these were the areas that unsuccessful candidates struggled in and what you need to be looking at going forward. And plus we do a more generic release publicly over, of those who failed, these were the 10 particular areas that were struggled on. So advisors coming up to the exam know the areas that their compatriots have actually struggled on in the past. So to that extent, we've taken it a lot further than we had. And we also continue to supplement the practice questions that are available online with retired questions from the exam to give people a good feel for what they look like.
So do you give advisors a mark? Like if they haven't passed, they don't get a mark? What's the thinking behind that?
It goes back, I guess, to when the standard FASEA put in was it's a pass or fail exam, and so the standard said you get a pass or fail mark. What we do is give them an indication of if they're nowhere near the pass mark, they're advised you can apply for a remark, but your mark is not sufficient. If your mark is close to the border, you'll be, the opportunity is there to apply for a remark. So it gives them an idea of where they sit without giving an actual mark.
All right, look, in the interest of time, I will leave it there. I do have a few more questions. I'll put those on notice. Thank you very much for your time tonight. Again, apologies for the delay in your appearance. Please go with our thanks. And we will now move straight on to the